Article that came out October 13th, 2017 in the Washington Post. Puerto Rico's troubles are far from over. The population's health is at risk. And I know they are in fear of disease outbreak happening because they are using creek water. And you know as well as I do, a lot of that water is unsafe to drink. But since resources has not reached everyone in Puerto Rico, they are just using whatever's at hand. Trump tweeted Thursday, "We cannot keep FEMA, the military and first responders who have been amazing, whatever. They always say that crap. It means nothing. In Puerto Rico forever. Putting Puerto Rico on notice that federal relief workers may be recalled. Trust me, they will be. Trump is not putting that out there for no reason. He has intentions of pulling them out. But the images of the physical devastation from Hurricane Irma and Maria throughout the Caribbean, especially on the U.S. territory of Puerto Rico, make it clear that it will take a lot of time and money to rebuild the damaged infrastructure. Now, I read some reports where they're estimating it could be up to 2 years before they have everything rebuilt on the island and get the roads back up, up to standards. And it's a lot of work that has to be done on Puerto Rico, period, point blank. The effects of hurricanes and other natural disasters, though, go far beyond the immediate physical cleanup. The impact on local health and demographics will likely have far reaching consequences even after the power lines are back up. Natural disasters are bad for population health. This year's hurricane have already affected these islanders' health. Sanitation systems throughout the Caribbean were severely crippled. In Puerto Rico, Maria, apocalyptic devastation left more than half of residents without access to clean drinking water. Damaged infrastructure isolates communities and leave hospitals without supplies, restricting access to health services with the electrical grid essentially wiped out in Puerto Rico. Many hospitals have to run on generators. And I was hearing about how they run out of gas, and that's also a problem. If they can open at all, without effective health services responding to accidents and injuries from the hurricane is obviously far more difficult. The devastation of health care services also makes treating chronic conditions like diabetes far more difficult. In the aftermath of a natural disaster, these conditions see increasing death rates as access to medicine and medical supplies declines. Officials in Puerto Rico are already raising the alarm about potential drug shortages. Ironically, Puerto Rico manufactures 25% of all US made pharmaceuticals, so production interruptions could have larger ripple effects. Disasters can also bring new health challenges. Natural disasters like hurricanes also create new health concerns. Three conditions put a population at greatest risk from communicable diseases, overcrowding, poor sanitation, and a lack of health care. These are the conditions we are seeing in the Caribbean after the recent storms. Because so many of Puerto Rico's residents still lack running water, people on the island are bathing and washing clothes in rivers that may be contaminated with sewage. For instance, standing water after widespread flooding also creates ideal breeding grounds for mosquitoes, which makes malaria, dengue, okay, we already know Zika, just the typical things that we know that mosquitoes can cause, especially as rain continues to fall. We already seen how The introduction of disease like Zika into new regions can have dramatic effects in both the immediate and the longer term. The Center for Disease Control for now doesn't expect to see cases of cholera in Puerto Rico, but other communicable diseases are likely included hepatitis A, diarrheal diseases. Wow. You don't think about these things, but when you are in conditions that are dire, any of those diseases can crop up. I mean, it's usually the normal ones that crop up, unfortunately. And when health services are overwhelmed, even relatively treatable conditions can quickly become fatal. We have seen this before during 2014 to 2016 Ebola epidemic in West Africa, which was brought in there, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. Every time caucasoids visited a certain part of West Africa, those were the same exact locations where Ebola broke out. So that was not a natural disease. That was deliberate and it came out of a lab. Maternal mortality rates soar as health clinics had to devote all of their attention to Ebola patients, and healthcare workers themselves fell ill and died. But you know why Ebola don't last long in Africa, ladies and gentlemen? I was researching it. The hotter the conditions, the weaker Ebola becomes. That's why it'll have an outbreak and within a few weeks it just dies out because the African climate literally kills Ebola. So that's why, it's hard for them to get diseases that really stick in Africa because those diseases have to be able to survive in a hot climate, and most of them cannot. Okay. The effects aren't short lived, they shape population for years. Puerto Rico saw remarkable population changes before the hurricane hit. The combination of low birth rates and high immigration meant that the island's population was already shrinking. Wow. I did not know low birth rate was going on among Puerto Ricans. This is the first time I have heard that. Um, the hurricane effects could exacerbate these changes, but previous research does not always give clear clues on the exact nature of these changes. Here's what we know. In addition to changes in mortality and population change from fertility and migration, in poorer regions around the world, fertility spikes occur after a disaster because people are unable to access contraceptive. Fertility can also sometimes spike because of intentional decisions when children can serve as an extra set of hands to earn income for the family. I just find it amazing that anytime, and maybe some of you notice this, anytime a population is against us, you notice those are the ones that get hurt, that are getting hit with low birth rates. It's amazing. And people don't realize even the Asian nations are experiencing a low birth rate. It's not just the Caucasoids. And now we're hearing about Puerto Rico is facing a low birth rate. I tell you what, if you don't believe this is the Most High at work, then you just don't want to believe it. That's all I have to say. Okay, Puerto Rico's high poverty rate could mean a short term upward trend in fertility, as in Nicaragua, but That's less likely given how low fertility was in Puerto Rico before the disaster. The average number of children born per woman in the territory is far below the mainland United States at 1.2 compared to 1.9 for the US overall fertility rate. A more likely scenario is that fertility will be further depressed in Puerto Rico. Natural disasters also induce people to leave. Yeah, well, I mean, if the island is not going to be built up for estimating about 2 years, there's no point in people trying to stay there. They're going to have to get out of there. And plus, they're saying electricity is not going to be restored until next year. I don't know why anybody would want to stay there in those kind of conditions. That just seems a little, well, never mind. Who knows what's in the mind of people? While it's hard to isolate a single cause for migration, most research has shown that extreme weather events may displace people in the short term, though there are more mixed effects in the long term. After the devastating April 2015 earthquake in Nepal, there was significant internal migration, but some Nepalese returned from overseas to check on loved ones on the effect of Nepal's, while others stayed overseas to provide remittance as a steady source of income. Some research on Bangladesh has shown little relationship between flooding and permanent immigration, while research on long term environmental change, such as from climate change and migration, shows a positive relationship in Bangladesh and elsewhere. There are already more Puerto Ricans in the mainland United States than on the island itself, and more than one third of these Puerto Ricans settled in Florida. Puerto Rico's bankruptcy, which may affect pension and health benefits as well as health and education services, is likely to be a driver of future immigration, though the disaster certainly will play a role. Wow. On the adjugate fertility, mortality, and migration patterns will most affect by the speed of the economic recovery in the affected areas. These changes would have important and long lasting political, economic, and social impacts, not just for Puerto Rico and areas hit by the hurricanes, but for the United States as a whole. Yeah, well, they're the next big migration heading over to the mainland US. It's not surprising, it's expected. But tell me what you think, ladies and gentlemen. Please leave your comments and subscribe. And if you can donate to my channel, please do. Peace, family.